Maybe to start off with, folks, is there any English-speaking person in the room? Perfect, we'll do it in English.
He's the one.
Yes, well, two, actually. It's both of them. We can ask them to stand up, but let's not make it any more awkward. Go for it, Tom.
Yeah, sure. So, welcome everybody. I hope, can you hear me well? Because of the noise. My name is Tom. I work at Meijers and Security, which is a broker in insurance. And before I joined Meijers, I spent about 15 years in cybersecurity. And are there any security professionals in the room? Ah, many of them. So I'm a little bit nervous because, you know, I see there is a heated debate within the cyber community around some of the basic controls. And we are going to talk about one of those. So my credibility for within the cyber community space is a little bit at stake here, but we'll manage. The second reason is my chief commercial officer is in the room, and he is full of expectations, you know. A broker at a security event, so my job is on the line as well. So, but no, just joking. Raymond, how about your nerves?
My nerves are pretty good. I'm actually more nervous for the election in the U.S. For those of you who are tracking it, it's I'm a little bit worried. Anyway, let's keep it to Cybersec. I've been in cybersecurity for 2.5 decades now, I would say. The company I worked for before I was Eclectic IQ. We did threat intelligence, and maybe just a very short story, Tom, if you would allow me. So with Eclectic, we did threat intelligence, and we sold threat intelligence to companies like large banks, government agencies. And just an example is an American bank who had a budget, a yearly budget, an annual budget of 500 million a year for just their IT security, their cybersecurity. And the threat intelligence actually helped them to decide, you know, where should we put our money? And I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm assuming not everyone has 500 million in budget yearly for cybersecurity, but I do think it's important for you guys to know where to start and what are some of the places that you can start with cybersecurity. So, Tom?
Yeah, no, that's true. So before we really dive in, let's manage expectations. So for the ones who are experienced security professionals in the room, you probably heard what we are going to tell you today. We would love to reverse engineer malware crafted by state actors, but we're not going to, right, Raymond?
Nope.
No, we are going to talk about foundation, the foundational controls for which we believe are not only good for purpose, but they are cost effective, and they have proven their effectiveness in the real world, against real world cybercrime. So yeah, and I think that's why we are together on stage as well. You might ask yourself, why is a broker in insurance and a security company here? But if you ask incident responders like Raymond, what are the basic controls that often were missing when things went wrong, and you ask me and I ask insurers, we pretty much get the same list. So that just validates how important these basics are.
Absolutely.
So let's push the button.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I spoke to an entrepreneur yesterday, and he said, you know what, I have just installed my sprinklers, I've just installed my alarm system for fire, so do you know what, I can actually get rid of my fire insurance. What about you, Tom? Any?
Yeah. I had a similar story, Randy.
Yeah.
So he told me, you know, I did install the sprinklers. So I told him, let's get rid of the insurance, right? And then that makes totally sense, right?
Yeah, and I think that's obviously not true, right? And I think the analogy works pretty well, and we'll get back to that. But it's a crowded space. We're at a cybersecurity event, and there's a lot of vendors, there's a lot of technologies out there, and where do you start, right? And I think this is what we're going to be talking about today, the fundamentals, the basics. right? And if you look at these vendors and these technologies, and you want to get started with cybersecurity, is you're going to have to do a lot of research. Then you're going to have to implement the technology. You're going to have to configure it. A lot of people forget the configuring part. You're going to have to operate it. You're going to have to manage it. And you're going to have to monitor it, right? And once you've done that, you're going to have to do it again next year and the year after that. And the reason why is because your footprint is changing, right? You're going to hire people. You're going to fire people. You're going to get new countries you're going to operate in. So you're going to have to do this repeatedly. And I think that's where what we want to do today is really give you that basic list, and probably for the cybersecurity specialists out there, it's not going to be that interesting, but I am going to challenge you to see if you've got that in order or not. Tom?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So when I joined Meijers in 2020, I talked to business owners, and they all have the same question, you know, what do I need to do? And I had about 400 of these conversations ever since. And the conversation basically is always around these fundamentals. I mean, the larger corporates, they have budgets, like the one you mentioned. They have security teams, they have CISOs, etc. But the smaller ones are just starting out. So we are going to talk about layers of security, foundational layers. I'm sure that if you walk around here at this venue, there will be booths which say, if you buy my solution, you're done, right? It's okay, you can sleep. We don't believe in silver bullets,
No.
right? We don't believe. I mean, one of my one-liners is, cyber risk is not about risk elimination, it's about risk reduction, right? And there's a big difference between reducing the risk and getting rid of the risk. You never ever will be able to get rid of the cyber risk, but you can reduce it to a level that is acceptable, right? It's manageable. So yeah, we believe that what we are going to present will be fitted for everyday cybercrime for everyday companies. Raymond.
And I think that just to highlight the analogy once more, so that's also what we're trying to depict here in the picture, is a layered approach. Now, again, for the cybersecurity specialist, this is common practice, right? So if one fails, the other one should react, and then again, and then again. So imagine a fire extinguisher, or a smoke detector, or an alarm system, and if all of that fails, you have the fire department rolling out. And if that fails, you have insurance. You have fire insurance to take care of the financial costs. Now, the analogy doesn't work completely, because there is a difference between fire and IT and cybersecurity. I think the statistics, Tom, I'm not sure, I think it's 1 in 8,000 that you're going to have a fire, that your machine's going to catch fire, that there's going to be a pyromaniac in your building. It's 1 in 8,000. With IT, it's 1 in 5 that you're going to be a victim of ransomware, an attack, data exfiltration. And I think that's the biggest difference between the two, is that once you have an IP address, once you're doing business online, you have an IP address, you have a port, you will be scanned every time, every day. And I think that's the difference between fire and cyber in this analogy.
So here is our layered approach. Raymond, you can kick off with the first
Yeah,
floor.
let's start with this foundation. Who knows MFA? Yep, everyone. Has everyone, so it's rolled out, it's configured, yep, and you monitor it, you check it every now and then? So, okay. For those who don't know, very simply put, it's an additional layer to your password. It's not, again, foolproof, especially now. There's a lot of ways that you can circumvent MFA, but Microsoft estimates that around 70 to 75% of automated attacks, right? Again, I'm not talking about state-sponsored actors that are going to infiltrate you. I'm talking about cyber criminals that have a working business model. So automated attacks, 70 to 75% will be prevented by just using MFA. Patching. Again, it's not sexy, but if you don't have a patching policy, really making sure that you understand what are my mission critical systems, what software are they running, do I understand my assets, right? So anyone of you that's been working in IT for a very long time know there is shadow IT, there is IT you have never heard of, there is a merger and an acquisition, there is maybe 1 or 2 servers you've never seen before. That's where software runs. Software gets vulnerabilities, they need to be patched. And sometimes you're going to have an argument with a business owner to say, yes, I'm going to take the system down because I need to patch this software. Obviously, this goes, the exception is 0 days, right? 0 days, for those who don't know, those are vulnerabilities that haven't been patched yet, so you have a very small window to operate. And you can still take care of them by taking them offline or some other drastic measure. Anyway, patching. Now the contentious one.
Well, this is the one that's sensitive, right? Within cyber experts as well.
Yeah, and I can understand. People have sold cyber security awareness as a human firewall. I think that's giving the human a little bit too much credit. I think it's good and I think it's necessary that people understand the difference between a phishing email and a normal email. And yes, they're getting more and more difficult to actually recognize, but I do think that if you have 1,000 employees or 100 employees and you can make sure that only 2 or 3 people click on it, that's at least a little bit less work for your SOC department to handle. So I do think it's still a good measure that people understand that if they find a USB stick on the floor, that they don't plug it into their laptop. If they see an email from the CEO asking them to wire some money, that they can recognize that kind of basic stuff. So yes, I do think it's important to educate and to make your employees aware of normal cyber hygiene. That's it, training.
Can I give an example?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, because we're not just partners here on stage. We are actually, Eye Security is a client of us,
Yep.
and vice versa. So they train me, and they almost got me last week. They sent me this email from the HR department, and it says, Tom, can you have a look? This looks fishy. And the mail they sent to me was someone who was applying for my job, for the practice leader cyber job within Meijers. And he told the HR department, as discussed with Tom, I would like to have an interview for his job. And there was an attachment. It looked like a PDF, but in fact it was HTML. And you really got me worried. You know, I didn't click.
We have to keep you on your toes, Tom.
But I alarmed the HR department in the weekend. Everyone had to get out of bed, etc. And they were just training me. And well, thank you for that. I mean,
you're welcome.
Thank you.
We got to keep you on your toes. The next one is detection. If you do not have a detection system in place, it's great having IT security controls, but if you're not detecting signals, if you're not detecting a process, a user, something anomalous going on, then it's moot. It's a moot discussion. So having a proper detection system in place, so think about EDR software, cloud monitoring, I think those are the type of systems. If you want to go fancy, NDR, those are some of the basics. You need to be able to detect these anomalies. If a user is logging in Asia and the next moment he's logging in London, there's something fishy going on. So being able to detect, and I think detection leads to response, Tom, and analysis.
Yeah, true. And that's where we have the crossover. Insurers understand this very well. They understand this so good because they see in all their cases and claims, they research which controls were missing, and they are fully aware that these basics need to be in place, and they will cover the costs of detection and response. That's within a cyber policy. They will also provide you with a 911 alarm number, which you can call day and night to get people like Raymond in and putting out the fire. There's lots more within cyber insurance. It will cover any cost of interruption, loss of profit. And let's say you have a data breach and your data is out there and a third party holds you liable for their damages. that's also within cyber insurance. So if you just remember 3 things: loss of profit, liability, 911. That's it, right? And if you zoom in, of course, there's lots of details, but that's basically what the core is. And we believe that if you do these first 5 layers or 6 layers, that for everyday cybercrime, the not targeted cybercrime that we face each day, it will protect you from this. Either you will prevent it, if you don't prevent it, you will detect it, you will either be able to stop it, and if stopping fails, then the insurance will cover the financial impact. Does that mean we eliminated the risk? No, we didn't. No, we reduced the risk. There will always be state actors, and if you have secrets, and state actors want to know your secrets, they will get your secrets. End of story. There will always be supply chain risk. If you connect your IT to your partners, you just introduce their attack surface onto yours. And last but not least, we all use software from third parties for our office environment, for security, for whatever. And if that software is being compromised, then we all have a problem, right? So it will never get back to 0, but it will. You can get it to a level that is acceptable, and that's our core message here. So yeah,
it's not sexy, right? These are basic things, but I can assure you, right? As Tom said in the beginning, we have an incident response team, and we get called 3-4 times a month. So these are not our customers, but these are just folks that can find us online. They phone our hotline. 3 to 4 times a month, we get folks on the line. We got ransomware, or we think there's data exfiltration. And then when we research, when we do forensics, it's one of these things usually that's a problem. It's not because they didn't install an IDS and IPS, that they have done pen tests, all of that stuff. It's because they didn't take care of one of these things. These are non-negotiables. And if you think you've taken care of all of them, great stuff. You're at that top percentage. Not interesting for cyber criminals, but there's a lot more. There's a lot more. That's why there's a whole billion-dollar industry in cybersecurity. You can do lots of things. You can do pen tests. You can do hardening of your hardware. I think there's 2 things that we wanted to highlight, and 2 things that we wanted to give you if you have all of these things covered. One is have a risk-based approach. Understand your company. Understand those mission-critical processes. Understand the systems that support them. And then think about which technology, which vendor, which concept you want to introduce. You can also have a talk with your IT personnel, and they will say, oh, I found this great technology. That's great, but that's bottoms up. Nothing wrong with that, but you would always have to think about how is it going to repair my mission critical systems. And the other one, I think, Tom, we wanted to highlight was the business impact analysis.
Yeah, I can't stress enough the word business here. When I was at the cyber team of Deloitte, we had this slogan, risk powers performance. The better you understand your risk, the faster you can go as a business person. So get the technical, I don't want to be offensive, but get the technical people out of the room and talk about business risks, and then go and see how that connects to technical risks, etc., etc. Because otherwise, you will be spending a lot of money trying to fix every technical risk out there, and some of those technical risks aren't impacting the business. So do it top down, make very sure that you do. And if you understand this very well, then you also can see where is our technical landscape vulnerable, and you can do pen testing. And you can't do, pen testing can be quite expensive, so you want to scope it. You want to bring it down to the absolutely necessary, and that's why you need to have this top-down approach.
Can I give him one more tip?
Yeah, sure.
So, incident response plan. So if you don't have one, it's very simple, just Google it. There's a bunch of templates online you can find. Know how your business works. You can use the business impact analysis for that. If you understand that, you know what priorities you need to follow when you're doing forensics or when you're getting your business back up and running. It'll save you days. right? So just do that. It's a very simple exercise. Again, after you've taken care of the foundation.
So, maybe our favorite topic, the myths. You know, there are many myths when it comes to insurance, and also when it comes to security. Shall I kick off, Ray?
Yeah, go for it.
So I've written them down. What I hear almost daily. Well, I mean, it was even worse. I was in a webinar of legal people protecting IT providers. And you know, in your service level agreement with your IT providers, there's a paragraph called liability, and the first sentence is, we are never liable, right? And these were the legal people who are crafting these legal sentences. And they said out loud, the business model of insurers is to not pay. And I was quite shocked, because I know insurers in the end a little bit better than I did 4 years ago, and they do pay, you know. So one of the myths is they will never pay. They do. They have a very healthy, what we call loss ratio, which is the ratio between the premium getting in and the claims being paid out. It's not different from recognizable insurances like fire, right? So other myths, and we will not talk about all of them, you know, because I want you to get into our booth and talk about myths, and maybe you have some myths of your own. But what I hear is you need Fort Knox security before you are eligible for insurance. We can talk about this one. I outsourced, well, I already gave away this answer. I outsourced all my IT in the cloud, so whatever happens, it's not on me, it's on my IT provider. I also hear that my residual risk, the one that was at the bottom layer, it's negligible. I often ask the CFO, did you do the math? Did you run the numbers? Did you calculate your loss of income when you are down for 3 weeks? Did you calculate your liability risk? No. Well, let's do so. And then often, you know, the residual risk is quite significant. It's not so little. And there's one, and that was true in I would say 2 years ago. I have to answer 1 million questions to get cyber insurance. And I teased some chief risk officers at a conference. I said, if you feel that that's the threshold, filling out a questionnaire, then I don't think you are in control of cyber risk, because being in control of cyber risk is a lot more work than filling out this questionnaire. And I do understand the annoyance of the questionnaires, but just do it. So any myths on your end, Ray?
I'll give a couple. I think the first one is, I'm not interesting as an organization. I only have 10 laptops, I maybe have some SaaS software, and everything runs in the cloud. So I'm not interesting for cyber criminals. Again, cyber criminals, they don't give a rat's ass where you are, how big you are, if you're in Amstelveen or in Maastricht, or if you're a logistics company or an accountancy or whatever. They just knock on your door. And they will do that automatically. Again, if you have an IP address, if you have a port, they'll scan it. And they'll do it enough times to see when there's a vulnerability, or they'll hack a password. So if the business model works, they will try. So they don't care how big or how small you are. They will try, and once they get in, you will pay. And if you want to know how much and how many times we have to negotiate with cyber criminals, again, come to the booth and I'll show you some examples. Now, the second myth is I have a firewall and I have antivirus. That's great. But alas, a phishing attack goes over your firewall. And there's a lot more other sophisticated attacks that don't even touch your firewall. And then the last one is I have everything in my cloud. And yes, cloud providers, they usually have pretty good security. So if you run part of your infrastructure on AWS, on Google, they do a pretty decent job. Their data centers, pretty good security. You know what they don't do? They don't do your password management. They don't do your user management. So even if you run shit in the cloud, but your password gets hacked because somebody's using a personal password and the same as their company software, you're still in a world of hurt. Anyway, some of the myths. Tom?
Yeah, I think we're pretty good on time. I'm looking at the files. Are we good on time?
But what does it cost, Tom? Just like a ballpark figure of
That's
insurance.
Yeah, because one of the myths is, it's hugely expensive, cyber insurance. Well, it depends. The consultancy answer is always it depends. It depends on your turnover. It depends on the nature of the data you have. Is it sensitive or not? The volume of your data. It depends on the amount you want to get insured. It depends on your deductible. Do you want to have a small deductible or are you willing to have a high? So it really depends. But just to give you a ballpark figure, let's say you run a business in a non-high risk sector. High risk sector, for instance, is a hospital or a
airport,
university, right? Those are risky. But a non-risk sector, let's say you make somewhere between 0 and 50 million turnover each year, and you want to insure something between 500,000 and 2.5 million. That will cost you somewhere between 1,000 and 10,000 K per year. Well, even the 10K number, it's quickly spent when we talk IT and security, right? So from the insurance perspective, I think that's incredibly affordable for many.
Yeah, and I think from a security perspective, think about endpoints. We charge for endpoints, so that's anywhere between 8 to 15 euros per endpoint per month. And obviously that depends on how many endpoints you have. I think in closing, Tom, before we start to answer some questions, again, they're not sexy. Make sure you got your fundamentals covered. If you've got them covered, think about cyber insurance, right? Think about the fire analogy. It's very simple, just take care of it. Once you go beyond that, make sure it's risk-based, it's business-based, right? If you go beyond these fundamentals. And if you have any more questions or comments, or if you want to challenge us on some of these myths, we welcome you to ask questions now or come to the booth.
So any questions? I think we still have a few minutes. Someone?
Everything is clear.
Clear?
Yes, people have got their foundations covered, or they're going to challenge their IT department tomorrow or this afternoon.
Yeah, sure. So we are at CO31. It's just here. If you go out to the right, you can't miss us. We have marshmallows, we have matches, and we have great people to talk to. So please. One question. Yeah, please do.
If you have a certification like ISO 27001, does that improve your chances of being insured?
So the question is, if you have like an ISO 27001 or 2 certificate, are you more eligible for cybersecurity? I do know that some insurers ask for these kinds of certifications, but it's not a must-have thing. It will help, it will give the insurer a little bit more reassurance that you are doing the right things, But in cyber, I think every security professional knows compliancy is not the same as being secure, and being secure is not always the same as being compliant. So yes, it helps, but it will not do miracles, I would say.
Yeah,
it should not be the driver for doing it.
Insurances are looking more and more at, do you have a SOC? Do you have a managed MDR? So something that's managed and operated 24/7. I think that's what they're looking for right now. And then some of the basics that we just covered.
So I think we need to close.
Yeah, I think we need to make some room.
From the organization looking at us. So thank you again.
Have a great day.
See you at our booth.